On today's episode of Star Wars Factions Compared, we examine the Royal Guards of the Empire, First Order, Republic, and Confederacy of Independent Systems. Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another episode of Star Wars Factions Compared. Today we are looking in depth at the Imperial Royal Guard, the Senate Guard, the Magna Guard, and Snoke's Praetorian Guards from the new movie The Last Jedi. Now, when I talk about Snoke's Guards, there will be some spoilers for the new movie, so if you haven't seen it yet, you may wish to skip this video. The focus today will be on which one could best protect its subject from a variety of threats. Which ones are the most lethal, the most deadly, and the hardest to defeat. Before we do continue though, I do want to channel my inner Jake Paul and let you guys know that I have started a merch store. This will be limited edition only, just trying to see if there is any interest, but I've got two versions of some t-shirts up, along with some sweaters and some mugs and some other stuff, and you can find all of that at teespring.com/store/EckhartsLadder. I'm also going to offer 33% off for anyone who wants to buy some merch today. Just use the code EL33 at checkout. Anyway, on with today's content. As we typically do, we'll start first with the Empire and an examination of the Royal Guards. Although the Royal Guards weren't the only guardsmen within the Empire, there were, for example, the Shadow Guards as well. They are easily the most recognizable variety, and they were the personal protectors for Emperor Palpatine. Despite their lack of real action in the original trilogy, the Emperor's Royal Guards were actually extremely talented warriors. The standard Royal Guard, however, was not the most elite unit in the Empire. We see, for example, Sovereign Protectors, who had the added advantages of force sensitivity. Don't be fooled though, Royal Guards were still extremely well trained. Royal Guards were selected from the best the military had to offer, usually Special Forces Stormtrooper divisions. Then they'd be put in very small classes, usually of 50 students of less. Then these numbers would be whittled down even further, often to just one student. It truly was a survival of the fittest environment. Students were not only trained by Darth Vader, but were also often put in head-to-head battles to the death. And remember, this is after candidates have been screened for fitness and loyalty to the Empire. Upon graduation, troopers would be completely loyal to Palpatine, even willing to kill other troopers if necessary. Given the structure and intensity of their training, they're also able to fight together extremely effectively, able to work together to protect the Emperor from any number of threats, whether internal assassins, Jedi, or traditional assault by rebel forces. Weapon-wise, Imperial Guards wore a red robe with full armor underneath. They typically would wield a force pike, as well as vibroblades and blasters for ranged combat. There's not a lot known about the armor other than that it was inspired by previous warrior castes. I will say, while the guards do seem to have almost unmatched training and loyalty to the Empire, their weaponry and armor is modest at best. I imagine the idea is that their body is the most dangerous weapon possible, and that everything else was just an extension of that. Next up we have the Galactic Republic and its Senate Guards. Similar often in appearance to the Imperial Guards, except clad in blue rather than red. Senate Guards were not only the personal protectors of senators and those within the Senate district, but also played a somewhat investigatory role when safeguarding against threats against democracy and the Republic generally. Because the Republic was far less militarized than the Empire, Senate Guards were not selected from the military, but rather from law enforcement agencies. That being said, by the time of the Clone Wars, the selection process had become somewhat corrupted, and persons were chosen often for their family connections rather than their skill in serving the Republic. Not much is known about the Senate Guard training, but unsurprisingly, it does seem like the process is much less rigorous than that of Imperial Guards. It is also worth noting that, like in the Empire, certain Senate Guards would be selected for a higher position, specifically Senate Commandos. However, it does seem like these ranks were more common than the Imperial equivalent. Onto equipment, Senate Guard outfits came in two varieties, one that was very functional and one that was more ceremonial. Now, even in their robes, they were still capable of fighting. However, if anything serious needed to be done, they would likely switch over to their armor, which provided additional protection and was less obtrusive. Senate Guards were also trained in a form of martial arts and typically used blasters and force pikes. Next, we have the Confederacy of Independent Systems and their IG-100 Magna Guards. Magna Guards were an extremely advanced form of battle droids, capable of even fighting Jedi. Now, a single Magna Guard probably wouldn't take on and beat a Jedi in one-on-one combat, however, two or more would have a chance. IG-100s were actually designed to fight Jedi, and because of this, they used lightsaber-resistant force staffs and could survive even decapitations. That being said, because Magna Guards were much more intelligent than standard battle droids, they could easily pick up and use other weapons without more programming. What's more is that the guards were actually individually trained by Grievous, not only in standard combat, but in the 7 lightsaber forms. Now, being a droid in the Star Wars universe does mean that you always will be at somewhat of a disadvantage when compared to organics. However, you'd be foolish to ignore the impressive programming of the Magna droid as well as their incredible build quality. Next we have the First Order and their Praetorian Guards from Star Wars The Last Jedi. Now, if you have not seen the new movie yet, I very highly suggest that you stop watching right now. Based on their appearance, the Praetorian Guards seem to be a much more powerful, efficient, and practical version of the Emperor's Imperial Guards. Whether that's exactly true, we don't know for sure. We've only seen the Praetorian Guards in The Last Jedi. We don't know anything about their training, but we can talk about what we do know. The First Order has generally emulated the Empire, making improvements where possible. We don't know for sure, but it does seem like the Praetorian Guards are an improvement on the Imperial Guards. We don't know about their training, but at least equipment-wise, they are given more to work with. They aren't weighed down even a little bit by a ceremonial cloak, and they have very practical, very powerful weapons. I also will assume that their training is the top of the line. In The Last Jedi, if anyone so much as motions towards Snoke, the guards snap in action, showing literally no fear. We also see that though they eventually do lose to Kylo and Rey, they put up a hell of a fight, and Kylo and Rey seem to be a new generation of very powerful Force users. At various points throughout the fight, Kylo and Rey seem close to death, and Kylo throughout is so overwhelmed that he is unable to use his very advanced Force powers to hold them in place. However, we cannot ignore that even with an 8-2 advantage against Kylo and Rey, they are eventually killed. The fight does show us that they have very powerful armor and weaponry. We see various Praetorians take lightsaber strikes and continue without even so much as showing a cut. And each guard seems uniquely trained in their own weapon type, which adds an interesting mix for anyone trying to assault someone that they're protecting. All in all, I wish I knew more, but I think now we should move into the ranking stage. Which one of these guards is the best and which one is the worst? Well, I think the best guard is the one we just recently discussed, the Praetorian Guard. By all accounts, the First Order improves upon the design of the Empire. As I mentioned earlier, the Praetorian Guard seems like a more practical, or at least equally as practical version of the Imperial Guard. However, I do think that they have better equipment and armor. Whether their training is as good, I think, has not been seen yet and perhaps will not be seen, but it is clear that the Supreme Leader is very capable of inspiring devotion in those who follow him. Sure, they were beat by Rey and Kylo, however, these two have something incredible going on, and I don't think that any of the other guards on this list would have lasted nearly as long as the Praetorian Guards. That brings us to number 2, and I think there's no denying that if the Praetorian Guards are number 1, the next best has to be the Imperial Guards. When training Imperial Guards, you take the best of the best and then make them kill each other. The ones who survive get to protect the most important man in the galaxy, Emperor Palpatine. Sure, we've never seen these guys in action, but I mean, just looking at them, you can tell that there's something special. They wear red in an otherwise white and black empire. They surround Emperor Palpatine when no one else seems to. They're even with him in his private chambers when he's otherwise alone. Admittedly, we do see Yoda just throw 2 royal guards against the wall, but I'm not going to hold that against him. Yoda is the most powerful enemy that the dark side has ever seen, at least by the time of the Clone Wars. The only real thing holding the Imperial Guards back from the number 1 spot is that they seem to have worse armor and weaponry than the Praetorian Guards. I mean, admittedly, we don't see the armor underneath their robes, but it does seem to be significantly less bulky, and their weapons are admittedly fairly simple. Still, I think they're an excellent guards unit and certainly worthy of the number 2 spot on this list, if not number 1. Number 3 is the IG-1000 Magna droids. These are basically as good as battle droids could get, at least for the time of the Clone Wars. Magna Guards were leagues ahead in intelligence when compared to the average B1, and they had nearly indestructible armor. This armor, as well as their ability to continue fighting, even despite suffering otherwise grievous injuries, did you guys see what I did there? Puts them second to none in terms of durability on this list. The only thing holding them back is the fact that generally in the Star Wars universe, droids will never be as good as organics. I don't think programming in the Star Wars universe can ever equal selecting the best of the best and then giving them the most difficult training imaginable. Still, these guys were a real force to be reckoned with, and they could even at times defeat a Jedi in one-on-one battle. Finally, in the last spot, we have Senate Guards. Now, I don't think Senate Guards were bad or anything like that, but they certainly couldn't match the training of, say, the Imperial Royal Guards, and their equipment didn't seem to match that of either Praetorian Guards or IG-100s. There's also the fact that by the time of the Clone Wars, corruption had entered into the service, and training and regulations probably weren't up to where they needed to be. Finally, keep in mind that the best Senate Guards were selected to be Senate Commandos, which in a way weakens their ranks. So, in my mind, we have Praetorian Guardsmen, Royal Imperial Guards, IG-100s, and then Republic Senate Guards. That, however, is just my opinion. Let me know what you think. Do you think that a squad of the Empire's guards could take on Snoke's Praetorian Guards? Do you think I got this one right? Wrong? What would you like to see next time? Let me know all of that and more down in the comments section. Don't forget, guys, I got the new merch line. It's only here for a limited time. If you guys like it, however, there will be more in the future. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, guys. As always, may the Force be with you.